If you're looking for an automatic watch under around $250, you should probably start with the Seiko 5KX. It may not be the best watch in that price range, and in fact, in this video, we'll look at a few other alternatives to it, but in 2023, it's probably the starting point for anybody looking for automatic watches. So let's check it out. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And today we're going to be looking at one of the best first automatic watches out there in the Seiko SRPD series, specifically the SRPD 55, also known as the 5KX. This watch has a rock-solid automatic movement from Seiko inside of it. It's based on one of Seiko's most classic and popular dive watches of all time, and it now comes in a staggering array of colors and configurations. And depending on which specific color or model you're looking at, you can often find them down around $200, making them a very appealing option in 2023. And one thing that I do like about the 5KX is that it looks great on a wide variety of straps and bracelets. Strapseeker sent over a couple of their hybrid straps for me to check out, and I'm going to be trying them out on the 5KX in this video, so you'll see that on there. These are hybrid straps, so they have a rubber bottom and then different materials on the top. One of them is like a nylon, one of them is an Italian leather. So you kind of get a little bit of the best of the both worlds, where you get sort of a nice looking top finish to it, and then underneath you get a rugged, comfortable, sweat-proof rubber finish. Anyways, we'll try them out in this video, and then at the end, I'll kind of give you my opinion on what I think of them. They sent these straps to me for free, but they didn't pay me any money to review them or anything like that. But that is why you saw the paid promotions flag at the beginning of this video. Now, another thing that makes the 5KX such an appealing option is its history with Seiko. It comes from a very prestigious line of dive watches, but it's kind of a rocky iteration of that because this one is not actually technically a dive watch anymore. It's become more of a great, rugged, pretty waterproof everyday watch. But let's see if we can unpack that a little bit. The Seiko 5 Sports SRPD is essentially a replacement or a continuation of Seiko's hugely popular SKX line of watches. Launched in 1996 and discontinued in 2019, the SKX became arguably the best affordable dive watch on the market in the course of its 23-year run. It featured an iconic and distinct Seiko look, a really well-designed case that was comfortable on the wrist and had a 4 o'clock crown for added comfort. And one of its biggest selling points was that it was an ISO certified dive watch, which meant it was suitable for professional scuba diving. And on top of all that, it could usually be found for around $150. And because of its huge popularity, a vibrant modding community developed around the SKX, which meant that there were a huge array of upgrades and aftermarket parts available to customize the watch any way you wanted. So when the SKX was discontinued in 2019, the community was really disappointed, but everyone figured that Seiko would probably be relaunching a replacement of it not long after. And indeed, later in 2019, Seiko announced a relaunch of their Seiko 5 Sports line, starting with the SRPD series, which looked almost identical to the SKX, leading many to nickname it the 5KX. The SRPD series, or the 5KXs, kept the same classic case that the SKX had, and in fact, all of the aesthetics of the watch look almost identical, except with some upgrades here and there. Notably, the dial was improved with raised indexes that have a silver outline, which gives it a much more premium and elegant look. And along with that upgraded look, Seiko launched it in 27 different styling options, different colors, different dial textures, different straps. And since then, they've just kept coming out with more and more options for the 5KX line. Seiko also upgraded the movement to the 4R36, which is one of the most proven and reliable and widely used watch movements out there. Seiko rebrands this as the NH36 and sells it to so many other watch manufacturers. It's reliable, reasonably accurate, features both hacking and hand winding, making it pretty user-friendly to use. And on the 5KX, Seiko switched over to a display case back so you can actually see the movement inside of it, which, while cool, also has some significant downsides. And it kind of highlights one of the most controversial changes Seiko made when they came out with this SRPD line of watches. Whereas the SKX was a certified 200-meter dive watch, which featured a screw-down crown and a solid case back, The SRPD line dropped that down to a 100 meter water resistance that does not have a diver's certification. So that still means the watch is effectively going to be waterproof for anything that you're going to do in the water other than scuba diving, but it's not going to be suitable for professional diving. And with the water resistance dropped down to 100 meters, it has less water resistance than most of its competitors. Most dive watches will still give you that 200 meters of water resistance, even if they rarely give you the dive certification to go with it. So whereas the SKX was an ultra affordable, rugged, professional dive watch, the SRPD series was more of a stylish, entry-level, everyday watch. The changes that Seiko made to the SRPD line make it much more appealing as an everyday watch, especially considering the upgraded movement and all of the different style choices that they added. But by taking away the 200-meter diver certification and the screw-down crown, they really stripped it of its identity as a professional tool watch, which really turned a lot of Seiko's fans off. And to kind of rub salt in the wound, Seiko also jumped the price up with a pretty staggering $300 retail price, which made it significantly more than the SKX had previously been available for. But it's now been a few years since the launch of the SRPD line. Prices have dropped and you can often find them right around $200. And at the same time, a lot of the competition, a lot of the other entry-level watches have tended to go up in price because of inflation and other factors, which means that the 5KX line, the SRPD line, is actually a really affordable, really attractive option for a lot of people. And again, I think it's probably one of the places you need to start in 2023 if you're looking for your first automatic watch. So let's jump into the specs and some of the details and see what Seiko is offering you for this roughly $200 to $300 price range, what its strengths are. There's a lot of very appealing things, but there's also a few areas where it's kind of lagging pretty far behind its competition. The 5KX line still has a lot going for it, and one of the best things about it is the case that it has. It retained basically the same case from the SKX. It has a really beautiful kind of curvy look to it with rounded sides that feature a polished finish with some brushwork going across the top of the lugs. And rather than having the crown at 3 o'clock, they have it at 4 o'clock, which gives it a kind of a unique profile, but also moves the crown into a place where it's less likely to dig into your wrist, which adds a little bit of comfort as well. The bracelet is not bad. It does feature solid links, however the end links are hollow end links, and the clasp is made out of pressed metal and it's a little bit on the thin, cheap side. But it features 4 micro adjust holes, so you should be able to get a pretty good fit, and the bracelet is relatively comfortable. And that makes it a big step up from the metal bracelets offered on Seiko's more classic, older Seiko 5 models. A lot of the older Seiko 5s from before the relaunch featured bracelets with folded links that kind of tugged at the hairs on your wrist and were not that comfortable and were very difficult to size. This one's fairly comfortable and it features standard push pins, so it's as easy to size as any other bracelet. Now that said, it's not a great bracelet, it's kind of rattly, and if you look closely, you can kind of see a little bit of a seam in the metal on the side of the link, so I'm not sure exactly how they're constructing the links here. I haven't seen that on really any other bracelets. And if you want to upgrade the bracelet, there's a lot of options available. You can check out Uncle Seiko, they have some great options there. Or you can start swapping it over to a wide variety of straps because this thing looks great on a lot of different straps. The case also features drilled lugs, which makes strap changes pretty easy. This rubber and Italian leather hybrid strap from StrapSeeker really looks good on it, kind of gives it more of an elegant look, making it a little bit more suitable for something you could wear into the office. But I really also like the orange and black one that they sent over that has the nylon finish on the top of it. Looks a little bit like a sailcloth strap, so it has that kind of that sporty look. And the bright orange rubber on the bottom side gives it a pop of color that I think really complements the watch well. Now the watch features a 42mm diameter case, which is kind of an average size for a dive watch, but dive watches do tend to be a little bit on the larger side. And if you have smaller wrists, a lot of times 42mm is too large, but this watch features only a 46mm lug to lug, so it's kind of narrow across the top, which means that even if you do have smaller wrists, you can probably pull this one off. Now, as far as the quality of the finishing and the build, I think it's pretty adequate for the price. Seiko has been getting a lot of criticism lately for misaligned bezels and misaligned chapter rings. And I have had some issues with misaligned bezels on some of the Seikos that I've gotten, but this one seems to be pretty well aligned. I do like the bezel action on this one as well. It feels like a Seiko bezel. It's a little bit different than a lot of the micro brands you're going to get. It has more of a springy, soft feel to it. and there is a little bit of play in between the clicks, but it's not loose at all. Seiko bezels kind of have this unique action where if you let go of the bezel, even if it's between clicks, it'll tend to just stay there. It took me a while to get used to, but I've kind of come around to it. As far as the finishing goes, I really love the dial and the handset and the markers. I think those all look outstanding for the price, but it feels like the printing on the chapter ring and on the bezel is not as sharp or as clear as I would have liked, but for the price these are available for, I think it's about what you would expect. It's also worth noting that the bezel does not have any lume on it at all, not even a pip at the triangle. But the hands and markers do feature Seiko's LUME Bright Lume, which does make it very easy to read in the dark. Now, one thing that Seiko is known for is their lume, and so we're going to be running this through my J-Score lume test, and I'm going to be pitting it up against a couple watches that we're going to be comparing it to in just a second. So the 5KX is in the middle here, which is appropriate because as you'll see in just a second, it's scored kind of in the middle as far as lume goes. With a score of 9, that puts it right around the average for Seiko dive watches. My Seiko Samurai comes in at a 10, and that's kind of the standard by which I measure everything against. To the left of it, you'll notice the Orient RA0ACK just absolutely crushed this test, as it usually does, with a score of 14, which makes it one of the brightest watches I've ever tested, especially for the price being very affordable at around $250. And then on the right, we have the Steel Dive SD1970, which, given the fact that you can pick it up for around $100, a score of 6 is about average for dive watches that I've tested, but well above average compared to other watches that are around $100. So while Seiko did downgrade a lot of the technical specs when they moved from the SKX over to the 5KX, lume doesn't seem to be one of them. The lume performance here is still excellent, pretty close to what you see from like the Samurai line or the Prospex divers that Seiko puts out. While the water resistance of the case doesn't have what it takes for deep sea diving, the lume is certainly up to the task. And beyond that, it's just always a useful and very fun, cool feature to have long-lasting, bright, glow-in-the-dark functionality on a watch. So from this point on, we're going to be comparing it to a few other alternatives to kind of give you an idea of whether or not you think this watch is worth it. Okay, let's start with my favorite alternative to the 5KX, and that would be the Orient RA-AC0K, also known as the Baby Triton. For around the same price as the 5KX, you're getting a sapphire crystal, you're getting 200 meters of water resistance, and you're getting better lume than the 5KX offers. And this watch is produced by Orient, which is a kind of sister company to Seiko and tends to offer similar levels of quality and reliability to what Seiko puts out. Like Seiko, Orient is a Japanese-based manufacturer who manufactures their own movements, and in general are known for being an excellent value in the watch world. Next, let's head over to AliExpress and see what we can find coming direct from China, and we're going to take a look at the Steel Dive SD1970. Now, this watch has just some insane specs for the price. You can pick it up for around $100. It has a sapphire crystal. It has a fully lumed ceramic bezel, which is something neither the Orient nor the Seiko 5 has. 200 meters of water resistance, and while the lume doesn't quite come to the same levels as the Seiko or the Orient, it's still pretty good. The downside here is that the design is a blatant copy of one of Seiko's classic models, which may turn some people off. And at that price, I think the details and the finishing are just a little bit below what you're going to find in those other ones. But for that insanely low price, you're still getting way more than your money's worth. Finally, let's consider one of Seiko's higher priced options and take a quick look at the Seiko Samurai. And this is my favorite entry-level dive watch from Seiko. Now, they have been trending upwards in price. You can usually find them starting for around $375, but some models are jumping up well above that. The standard models of the Samurai are going to be very similar to the 5KX in terms of specs and finishing, but they do have that 200 meters diver's certification, including the screw-down crown, and I think just a slightly more interesting design, maybe a little bit more interesting dial work. And if you're okay with going up even a little bit more in price, they have some newer models that have both a sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel, which definitely offers a more premium look and feel. But at that point, you're probably going to be paying $500 or more. Okay, so let's wrap this up with my final thoughts. As I mentioned, I don't think I would personally go for the 5KX as my first choice for an automatic watch. For me, I'm more drawn to that Orient Triton Jr. I prefer a watch with a sapphire crystal, and I think the Orient just offers better specs for the money, and I kind of like that it's a lesser known brand that kind of flies under the radar a little bit. That said, I still think that the 5KX has a lot going for it, and I think for a lot of people, it is going to be the best choice for their first automatic watch. Many people are drawn to the 5KX line because there are so many different options out there. You're going to be much more likely to find a color or style or perhaps even a special edition that really connects with you personally. Whereas almost any other watch in this price range will have maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 different variations tops. The 5KX line probably is approaching like 100 by now. The other thing that I think this SRPD line has going for it is the modding history behind it. So many of the parts that were developed for the SKX watch over the last like 30 years continue to be compatible with these 5KX watches, which means you can buy it in its sort of under-spec'd state. And if you want to later on, if you get the experience or if you have a friend who has the know-how, you can upgrade it to a sapphire crystal. You can get a better bezel. You can get a better bezel insert if you want to add a LUME one. You can change like everything on the watch. So this is going to be one of the easiest watches to find parts for if you want to modify it and upgrade it in the future. And as far as those straps from StrapSeeker that we're trying out on here, I do really like them. The one problem that I had is they do feel like they need a little bit of a break-in time. I've been wearing them on and off for the last week or so, and they're a little bit stiff on the wrist. And I think that's partially due to the fact that they are 2 layers of material and they're a little bit thick at the point where it connects to the watch. But the rubber underside is pretty supple and flexible, so I do suspect that these will break in pretty nicely. Both the leather and the nylon were cool options. The nylon one kind of reminded me of sailcloth straps, and a lot of people have been looking for alternatives to things like the Artem sailcloth, which is a very expensive sailcloth strap. This gives you a similar look for a lot lower price. So in the description down below, I'll leave links to purchase the watch if you're interested in getting a 5KX for yourself. I'll leave links to StrapSeeker if you want to check out those straps. And I'll also leave links to my shop at justthewatch.com where you can pick up this t-shirt and a lot of other cool stuff. Let me know what you think of the 5KX. If you have any personal experience with it, drop me a comment down below. Always love to hear from you guys. That will wrap it up for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.